It's been a while since I've published my first game. It's called Kamboja and it's on Steam right now. You can check it out if you want, but I must warn you, this game isn't very good. Don't get me wrong, I'm very proud to have completed this project from start to finish and actually managed to publish this game on Steam. But the thing is, creating a project is hard, and sometimes you only start to see the flaws of your project when it's too late. Well, you have two options then, just throw the game away and start another one, or you could just keep doing it regardless of the flaws. Because the most important thing for developers is actually to be able to finish a project, not necessarily for it to be perfect. So that's what I did. I've worked on this game for like a year, and after the game was done, I published it on Steam. So that begs the question, why am I creating another one? This isn't a simple question to ask because there's actually a lot of small reasons that together makes a big motivation to make another one. But before I do that, let me explain what is this new game. Trigger Fever is a top-down shooter multiplayer game that mainly just puts you in an arena with up to 4 players and you just shoot each other. That's it. There are many different modes like last one standing, most kills after a specified period of time, etc. But the main concept is simple, you just kill everyone. I know, it's a simple concept, maybe kind of silly. There's not much uniqueness or a very strong hook, but this isn't what I'm focusing on actually. I'm making this game to prove to myself that I can make a game from start to finish and publish it on some selling platform. Now, I have actually already done that with Kamboja, but there is a lot of stuff that I made in that game that I look back now and think about doing differently. And I want to prove to myself that this game isn't the only game I made. I want to know if I can make another game if I want to, and just keep doing games forever. The main concept still remains from the first game to this one, but looking back, I can see so many flaws in the first one that my soul just begs me to create another game that don't have all those flaws. So let's list them. At the time, the main framework I used to make games was libgdx. It's a framework for developing games in Java, and of all the games engines in the framework, this one was the one that I have been most comfortable making games at the time. The main reason is that since I started learning programming, I've always made things in Java. It was the first language I knew, and naturally, my game dev interest came when I started using Java to make games, so I just kept doing them with what I had. Now, libgdx is an amazing framework, don't get me wrong. It can do a lot of stuff, but there's no way that I can compare it with something like Unity or Unreal that not only makes the work incredibly faster, more visual, but there's also a much bigger community that makes assets packages, can answer your questions much quicker, and it's constantly being updated with new features. Not only that, but libgdx had some issues with the Steam SDK. Since Valve doesn't have an official SDK for Java, people had to come up with some workarounds. And the most used one is a C++ wrapper that wraps the SDK into Java. But this is actually maintained by a single dude in the internet that has nothing to do with Valve. That means I can't really trust it to be updated frequently and as fast as the official version. For example, the controller setup that Steam uses was not updated on the SDK, meaning that a lot of controller code didn't work properly, as it used old versions of the SDK. So, because of that, I'm migrating to Unity. I've been messing with Unity since 2020, and since then I've learned a lot of things, even managed to work for some companies by coding in Unity. It was kind of easy for me because I already had the code and logic from Java, and Java to C# isn't that different. Making games for game jams with Unity also helped me to really grasp the engine as my main software right now. Kamboja had an offline multiplayer, or as some people call it, couch play, as in the other players had to be physically with you to play the game, all in the same computer with a shared screen. Now, this may not seem a big issue, but remember that not much people actually have their friends physically with them, as much as they did like 10 years ago. So it's much harder to gather your friends with you to play. I'm not even considering the pandemic. Not only that, but me, as a dev, has to be constantly playing the game to test and balance it. So you can imagine that I hadn't had much time to actually test the game the way I wanted. Now with Unity, multiplayer is a lot easier to make, as there are many packages and libraries that make this very fast and practical. The one I'm using right now is Photon Pun, which can even host cloud servers to host your game, which is essential for a multiplayer game to work. Trigger Fever is gonna have a lot more weapons, skins, maps and stuff, Not only new maps but new mechanics for them. I even plan to make it work with Twitch streaming, so the chat can activate specific platforms and traps within the map. This isn't implemented yet, but I kinda need to take into account that people might want to stream the game, and have this little interaction can be fun. Since I'm planning on having much more content, I need to have some kind of inventory system, and inevitably add some kind of market to the game, so people can trade, buy and sell rare weapons and skins. So I had this idea that if I'm gonna publish this game on Steam, why not use the Steam inventory and market system? Steam has an amazing inventory system that not many games use, and that opens a huge possibility of people want to collect rare items and maybe trade or sell them. Not only that, but this actually facilitates me by the fact that I won't need to implement inventory nor trading code in the game. Everything will be handled by Steam. And you know, people like rare stuff, so they like to show off this specific special edition weapon that has only 0.001% drop chance. Even though they don't really play the game that much, this can encourage the people to play the game more. So, how's the game doing? Trigger Fever was conceptualized by having 3 different stages. The first one is the prototype stage. It was made as a proof of concept of the idea, to actually see if it works. I wanted to do this prototype mainly to test the Photon package and get the multiplayer working. If I couldn't get the multiplayer to work, then there was no reason to continue with the project. The main things in the prototype were character controls, some weapons, basic UI, simple map, and some game mechanics. A new thing that I also wanted to test was some kind of new mechanic that didn't exist on Kamboja. That's the kick. If you are in close range with another player, you can kick him, and that stuns him for a while, preventing them from moving and shooting for a few seconds. This can be used to finish a player and have an easy kill, but it's kind of risky. At first, you need to get into close range, but there is a chance to get kicked first, as all the players are able to kick regardless of the weapon they chose. This surprisingly worked pretty well, and the people that had played the game liked it a lot, so I consider this a win. The next stage was the alpha stage. Now that I had a game that kind of worked and wasn't a complete trash, I needed to see how well it escalates, so I needed to put more weapons, more skins, more maps. I remade the UI, put some new game modes, make it look more professional. Even though this was far from being the complete game. I created everything that a game should have: settings, a room finder, HUD, credits, juice, etc. This is a more polished state of the game that I made freely available on my Game Jolt page. You can even download it and play right now if you want to. I'll put the link on the description. And now we enter the stage 3, the Steam stage. This is the stage that the game is currently in. Not very into it, but I have made some stuff. Mainly all the Steam integration like inventory, achievements, custom maps by the community, cards, and also a lot of new weapons, skins, maps, game modes, and other stuff. This stage is mostly around creating new content for the game, as the main core gameplay is kind of already finished. The issue about Kamboja only have offline multiplayer kind of pisses me off, so I made Trigger Fever online, but having this game only to be available online also is pissing me off. So I came up with the idea of having both of them working, and to be as integrated as possible. Yeah, offline and online players mixed together into the same room. You want to play online with strangers? Hop into a room and wait for people to show up. You want to play with your friends at your house? Hop into a room and just connect the controllers. You want to pair up with a friend at your house and shoot at some strangers online? Well, hop into a room, connect the 2 controllers, and just wait for people to show up in the room and play. This is the behavior that will make my soul rest finally. I'm still working on it, but the main issue I'm having right now is the fact that I don't have 2 controllers, so I can't really test the offline multiplayer properly. I'm still working on it, and I probably need to find someone to borrow me a controller, but I want to make this work as soon as possible. As you can probably notice, English isn't my main language, and that's because I live in Brazil, and we speak Portuguese here, not Spanish. Many developers here have this big question like, should I make my game in Portuguese and enable my fellow Brazilians to play the game, or should I make the game in English and make it universally available, even though only 5% of Brazilians know how to speak English? So yeah, why not both? The game began as English only to be available universally, but I don't want to neglect my own country, so I do plan on putting some Portuguese translations on it. In the future I may even put some more languages though, but that's not the focus right now. As I have mentioned before, I want to have special maps that do stuff based on Twitch comments. Of course, this is mainly to encourage people to stream the game though. But yeah, I'll need to create some special mechanics, then just come up with some way for the Twitch chat to interact with the map mechanics. These are some random ideas that came up on my mind, but I haven't expanded on it yet, so it's not the main focus of development. Maybe for future updates. I am completely traumatized by the multiplayer only experience, because not everyone has friends. So I had this idea of creating big bosses that can be killed. They will have a lot of mechanics and attack patterns, something like what Cuphead did with their bosses, so people can play the game even though they don't have anyone to play. It also needs to be considered that, as a mainly multiplayer focused game, the initial launch, there is a probability that not many people will be playing the game, so I need to have something for the player to do when there is literally no one else playing the game. My first attempt on making bots was in Kamboja, and oh boy, it did not go well. But I'm kind of curious to see if after 5 years I can manage to make it work a little better, also considering the single player experience of not having anyone to play with the game with. So, conclusion. Yeah, I'm making this game right now. As I make updates on it, I'll post here. There isn't a Steam page for it yet because I need to create a game trailer. It's the last thing that needs to be done so I can put in the page online. Probably on the next episode, the Steam page will be available. So yeah, cheers!